Hi everybody, welcome back to my cult situation report. I am Daniella Mestyanek Young, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. I am the author of a book called Uncultured about growing up in the Children of God religious cult, going into the cult of the U.S. Army, and wrote this book while I was watching a cult leader run America. The New York Times said, "It is a propulsive memoir delivered in the honest tones of a woman who didn't always think she'd live to tell her story." And specifically, the audiobook, which I recorded myself, has landed twice in the New York Times. Once as the editor of Arts and Cultures, one of his favorite things of last year. Yay. Okay, so as I have a master's degree from Harvard in organizational psychology, now I'm writing a book called The Culting of America. We'll get some updates on that. As former Captain Mestyanek of the U.S. Army, senior intelligence officer to a combat aviation battalion, every officer in the Army on a Friday gives like a roll-up to their higher headquarters of what they did that week, them and their soldiers. And so for me, as the expert on the bad guy, it was a roll-up of what went on in the world of the bad guys. Yes, they've really grown men in camouflage pajamas call themselves good guys and bad guys with their full chests. It was bonkers. So I continued to do this, right? This is my weekly roll-up of everything that happened in the world of cults and in my world of cults. Okay, so Uncultured is a memoir. It is a story. And it shows you a cult, and it parallels the Army to a cult. And I hope it begs you to question the thing I sign in every book that I send out: what cults are you in? Right? But it's a story. I'm not necessarily teaching you anything. And I hope it's written in such a way that this quote I love about memoir: nobody reads your story, they read their story. And I'm like, yep. So now I'm working on this book called The Culting of America, which is a research book about cults. It takes my 10-part list of cults that I usually have. So it's charismatic leadership and his skinny white woman, worldview shift to come under the transcendent mission, the sacred assumption, then a transcendent mission, then constant self-sacrifice of members, insulation or isolation from the world, the outside world, distinguishable vernacular, they have their own language, us versus them mentality, exploitation of labor, which is always attached to 4, self-sacrifice, and 9, high entrance and exit costs, and finally, ends justifies the means mentality, right? This is what we saw on January 6th, for example. Okay, so for me, if you have 10 out of 10 of these, like, congratulations, you're a cult. But also, I'm going to break down each of these and show you the cult behavior in the cults, in the military, and then in groups around you. So I've been working on this book for a year and a half. Many of you are very excited for it. I am writing it as fast as one can write 13 research papers in a row that nobody is making them do. I am finishing up chapter 7. I'm a few days late this month, but I also edited the last 6 chapters so that they could go to the real editor, because I've now signed the self-publishing contract and I'm going for it. I am going to work incredibly hard to get it done by early spring so that it can be published by next kind of like late fall holiday season, which I know is still a long time. It's a whole nother year, but such is the way good books are done. Okay. So the chapter I'm working on is the chapter about language. So I've been doing a lot of content on language this month, which is always, I think, of supreme importance to cults, right? Language is the first thing people are willing to change about themselves. Like, we're easily willing to adopt new words and change our language. But then it's the last thing from cults that lingers, right? So Amanda Montell, who wrote the book Cultish, she says, after you've grown your hair back, moved back home, deleted the app, the language is still with you and will always be with you, right? You'll hear that language and be like, whoa. Okay, so distinguishable vernacular, I say, different than jargon, right? Every group has jargon, but that can be understood by outsiders for the most part, right? It's when you start getting to the point where like you need a translator in the room to have an operations meeting, which is true of both the Children of God cult and the U.S. Army. Like that's a distinguishable vernacular. And part of it is it feels good to learn a distinguishable vernacular because you feel like part of the group. When you feel excluded by other people's language, it doesn't feel good. So you willingly adopt the language of the group. But now you're actually more isolated from outsiders because they don't understand what you're talking about. This is really a huge part of the struggle for veterans who are getting out of the military because they don't know how to talk about their career and the things that they did in corporate speak. They only know how to talk about it in Army speak. This is also part of why I did the recording of my own book, which was very difficult and very emotional. But I was like, there's no way that we're going to find someone who speaks cult language, Army language, Brazilian Portuguese, and Mexican Spanish with a gringa accent and can also say First Lieutenant Daniella Mestyanek without missing a beat. Okay, so much about language. I can't even synopsize. Is that a word here? I can't even give you a synopsis quickly because it would take the whole hour. I have already written 33 pages and it's still not done. So language is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Yeah, so I'm excited to be done with that soon. The biggest thing this week has just been Trump and the literal Nazi rally that he held in Madison Square Garden, which, by the way, was held 85 years, 8 months, and 8 days from the last time there was a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden. And Stephen Miller did that on purpose because 88 has been adopted by white supremacists as a symbol, 8th letter of the alphabet, HH, Heil Hitler. So for sure that was not a coincidence. It looks like maybe it's blowing up in their face, actually. It looks like maybe a lot of people who were deluding themselves finally opened their eyes. It's been interesting. You know, I mean, I was telling Mr. Knitting Cult Lady last night because we have, like, people in our real lives close to us who, like, might still be on the other side of this. And at some point, you know, when we're a week away, it's like, look, either he's going to get stomped or they're going to lose us from their lives pretty quickly because we will be the enemy within to liberal, outspoken veterans, right? And then sucks to be a Cassandra because being proven right is never fun. So anyways, hopefully that's not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, all the symbology is there. And like, at this point, he's just leaned into it, right? And this is something that I notice with cult leaders is that like in the beginnings of their adult lives, when they're still refining all the skills that are going to help them be a cult leader, sometimes like it hasn't been decided yet that they're just going to be evil and manipulative. You know, I think Elon Musk in the beginning was like, oh, social justice, a few things, blah, blah, blah. Same with Jim Jones from a different perspective, right? But then at some point, they're just like, nah, I'm just going to go full supervillain. And they throw themselves into that. And anyone with the skills of charisma and influence can, like, use those for harmful things, right? Every tool is also a weapon. And this is one of the reasons I always tell people, like, beware of people that know a lot about history's bad guys, right? Because they also know how to do it, right? I mean, for Taylor Elson Swift's sake, you know, Trump had a book of Lillard's speeches by his bedside, right? Like, he's always wanted to emulate him, and it's so scary. So it's just been a lot of that and a lot of updates to that. And there was a magazine interested in an essay from me on this situation, and it didn't work out, but I wrote the essay anyway, so I am going to read it to you. It's not, like, polished yet, and it could still use more sources, but this is what we have. I knew Donald Trump was going to win in 2016, not in spite of his extremism, as pundits kept saying. but because of it. In that moment, I understood what was going to happen and how easily individuals would fall into the cult of MAGA. It has nothing to do with intelligence, income, or even religion. It has to do with an individual searching, often due to fear of the other, the outsider, and a strong sense of impending doom, and finding a group that enthralls them with ideas and holds them in isolation long enough that they begin to reflect the group norms around them. Not able to see through the circular logic and conspiracy theories, they continue on, even when the promised apocalypse never arrives, following their leader unquestioningly, even to the steps of the Capitol. As we near what may be the most significant election of our lifetimes, a lot of Americans are confused by the way conservatives of the GOP and even religious groups, those same ones who preach family values, so fiercely support Donald Trump, a man who's been divorced 3 times, slept with a porn star while his wife was pregnant, and is now a convicted felon, and keeps a booklet of HH's speeches on his bedside table. But for anyone who understands cult psychology, this isn't shocking at all. Not even the rally at Madison Square Garden, which purposely aped a Nazi rally held there in 1939. Why can't people see that it is happening here? People keep asking me. I know these answers because I've been trained on extremist ideology, on cult think, since the day I was born. The truth is, it's not that those in the cult of MAGA don't see where this is going. It's that they want it to happen. Cult members don't fear the coming apocalypse that their all-knowing leader has warned them about. They crave it. They've already given up everything for the belief that they're right, and they'll gladly watch the world burn to prove it. I'm a cult survivor and expert on extreme groups and bad leadership. I grew up in one of the most notorious cults in history, the Children of God, and later became an intelligence officer in the U.S. Army, where I saw several different forms of extremism in both the terrorist groups I became an expert on and in the U.S. Army's own brand of cult-like loyalty and radicalism. Many people think cults are fringe groups we only hear about in extreme cases, like Jonestown, the Branch Davidians in Waco, Warren Jeff's FLDS child brides. The Children of God, the cult I was born into, was one of these radical extremist groups. My parents, like so many others, gave up everything. Grandparent, mother was born in, but father gave up. Okay. My parents, like so many others, gave up everything to follow a man they believed would lead them through the apocalypse into a new world order. We lived in isolated compounds where education didn't matter because we believed the world was ending soon. Children like me weren't expected to have futures. This is why I love my gray hairs. We were raised to be soldiers in God's end-time army. And that's the picture of 2-year-old me dressed up as a soldier of love in God's end-time army. When the apocalypse predicted for 1993 didn't happen, our leaders explained it away by saying God gave us more time to convert people, and life went on. When I share this story, people are horrified, but cults aren't as rare as we think. Cult mentality can emerge anywhere people surrender their loyalty to a leader who they believe embodies their identity. The larger the group, the more powerful the cult becomes, as it starts to feel like the norm, not extremism. I've been told that 75 million people can't be in a cult, but a cult is defined by the power and fame of its leader, and no group is too big to be a cult. One of the first lessons I learned as a child in the Children of God was that outsiders are dangerous, and that our group was special. The world outside of us was doomed. This us versus them mentality is a classic feature of cult behavior. And it thrives on the fear of persecution, fear of the imagined enemy. Cult leaders, whether religious or political, position themselves as the savior, the only one who can protect their followers from the threats they themselves have manufactured. In the MAGA movement, Donald Trump has positioned himself as the protector from a variety of so-called dangers: the deep state, the media, political opponents. He has painted them as enemies out to destroy America, fostering a siege mentality among his followers. This constant sense of threat makes the group more insular, more paranoid, and more loyal. They don't see Trump's flaws as disqualifying. They see them as proof that he is being attacked because he's right. The more the world condemns him, the more his followers cling to him. It was clear to me, even during Trump's 2016 campaign, that his rhetoric matched classic cult behavior. I was frustrated that so many people couldn't see the danger he posed. Trump's followers don't just see him as a politician. They see him as their last hope, the only person who can protect them from the collapse of their world. This belief was evident on January 6, 2021, when his supporters stormed the Capitol. They genuinely believed they were defending their country from destruction, much like the Branch Davidians believed they were defending themselves from government tyranny. In both cases, the leader convinced his followers that the enemy was at the gates and that extreme measures were necessary to protect the cause. And David Koresh was raping the children. So before we get into government overstep here, the government needed to come in, and he whipped up his followers into that reaction. The government also acted poorly, and I'm always here for critiques of the government, but we don't get this conversation right generally in American society. One of the most compelling tactics Trump has employed is what I call the King David defense. In the Bible, King David is a flawed leader, guilty of adultery and murder, yet he is still chosen by God. For many religious groups, this story offers a powerful rationale for supporting someone like Trump. They believe that, like King David, he is a chosen leader, flawed but appointed by God to lead them through this tumultuous time. Trump's supporters often excuse his moral failings by appealing to this idea that God can use imperfect vessels for divine purposes. This defense allows them to overlook or rationalize his behavior, seeing him as someone who, despite his personal failings, is still fit to lead. The King David defense is not just about religious justification. It's about psychological investment. By framing Trump as a divine figure, his followers have tethered their identity to his leadership. They're not just supporting a politician. They're defending their own worldview. Remember, that was step 2 of a cult. They don't give you a religion. They give you a worldview. The deification of idiosyncrasy occurs when cult leaders' eccentricities, moral failings, or unconventional behaviors are reframed as signs of their uniqueness and divine selection. In Donald Trump's case, his unorthodox actions, whether brashness, dishonesty, or legal entanglements, are celebrated by his followers as proof of his authenticity and defiance of the establishment. This idolization transforms his flaws into virtues, and any accusations against him are dismissed as attacks on their chosen leader. As his supporters often seem to imply, even if he did it, doesn't mean he's guilty. When people on the left ask how MAGA supporters can rally behind someone like Trump, who seems to embody the opposite of their conservative family values, they often encounter the King David defense. This is too long. The King David defense works as a thought-stopping technique, allowing Trump's followers to rationalize his actions. His imperfections are dismissed in favor of the belief that he is saving the nation. The King David defense also taps into the us versus them dynamic so necessary for cults and coercive control. Criticism of Trump is seen not just as an attack on him, but on his followers and their values. By framing Trump's personal failings as irrelevant, His followers remain loyal, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of his misconduct. One of the most dangerous aspects of cults is their obsession with apocalyptic thinking. Growing up in the Children of God, I was constantly told that the end of the world was near, and that we were the chosen ones who would survive and rebuild. After a little space travel, because as we know, cults are always promising space travel. This belief gave us a sense of purpose, but also fueled a persecution complex. The more we believed the world was ending, the more we felt under attack by the outside world. America has a long history of apocalyptic thinking, and it's been woven into the fabric of our culture since the earliest days. From the Puritans who believed they were building a New Jerusalem in a world on the verge of divine judgment, to 19th century doomsday movements like the Millerites, who predicted the end of the world in 1844, which they called the Great Disappointment when it didn't happen. Apocalyptic beliefs have shaped everything from religious revivals to political movements. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we see it again with groups like Jim Jones' People's Temple or David Koresh's Branch Davidians, who both led their followers toward violent ends under the belief that the apocalypse was imminent. In America, this kind of thinking has never really gone away. It's just shifted forms, finding new leaders and causes to rally around. We see the same apocalyptic rhetoric in the MAGA movement. Trump's followers believe America is on the verge of collapse, and he is their last hope to save it. This sense of impending doom justifies extreme actions. When you believe the end is near, anything seems acceptable in the name of survival. That's why we've seen MAGA supporters engage in violence and lawlessness. They truly believe they are fighting for their way of life. Trump has played into this mentality perfectly, casting himself as the only one who can protect his followers from the chaos he claims is coming. January 6th wasn't just a riot, it was a manifestation of apocalyptic thinking. Trump supporters believed they were defending their country, and they were willing to go to any lengths to do so. The New York Times, in an article about Trump's persecution complex, talks about how useful it can be. Persecution is a powerful social concept. It moves people to empathize with and defend those perceived to have been wronged. It rouses righteous indignation, and it produces the moral superiority of long-suffering. The term cognitive dissonance comes from the study of cults. In the 1950s, social psychologist Leon Festinger and his colleagues infiltrated a UFO cult that believed the world would end on a specific date. When the prophecy failed, instead of abandoning their beliefs, many members doubled down, trying even harder to convert others. Festinger's research showed that when faced with conflicting evidence, cult members often reinforce their beliefs rather than admit they were wrong. This cognitive dissonance is evident in the MAGA movement today. As Trump's legal troubles mount and his grip on power weakens, some of his followers are faced with the reality that he may never return to the presidency. Yet, instead of walking away, many will likely continue to support him, convinced that he is still their savior. Others may start to see the cracks in their worldview, but for many, the psychological investment in Trump is too deep to let go easily. We've seen this same dynamic play out in other cults. Warren Jeffs, the leader of the FLDS, and Keith Raniere, the founder of NXIVM, continue to have loyal supporters despite being imprisoned for heinous crimes. Their followers see their incarceration not as proof of guilt, but as a persecution by their enemies. The Mormons are quite good at this too with our prophet Joseph Smith. This ongoing devotion is a hallmark of cult dynamics, where the leader is deified and any evidence of wrongdoing is dismissed. Teleological thinking, which interprets events as a part of a predetermined plan, can lead believers to a passive attitude toward the world's problems. When combined with apocalyptic mania, the belief that the end times are near, this perspective fosters a sense of inevitability. People who think this way may feel that human intervention is pointless because everything is unfolding according to God's will and the world is destined to end soon. As a result, they become indifferent to addressing societal issues, disengaged from efforts to create real change or confront injustices. And we also see this, of course, in like corporate world, I feel like, with this like, oh, the machines are coming, AI is going to take everyone's jobs, and then just like we don't have to actually focus on how we're going to prepare people for all the changes that are coming into the world. When the apocalypse doesn't come. One of the most devastating moments for any cult is when the prophecy fails. When the world doesn't end, or when the leader's promises don't come true, the group is forced to confront the reality that they've been lied to. For many, this realization is too painful to accept, so they double down on their beliefs. Others begin to see the cracks and eventually walk away. We're approaching a similar moment with the MAGA movement. And I think the Madison Square Garden rally was a proverbial line in the sand, causing many to wake up to Trump's extremism. Some will continue to cling to the belief that Trump is their savior, even in the face of mounting evidence to the contrary. And the thing about lines in the sand are they're easily washed away. To the contrary. But others may begin to question their loyalty. Many of his followers are faced with the possibility that is repetitive. As the MAGA movement faces its own failed prophecy moment, our society must be ready to support those who walk away. Leaving a cult isn't just about changing beliefs, it's about rebuilding a life. Cult members lose their support system when they leave, and we need to be there to help them reintegrate into the world they've been taught to reject. Cults are always out for political control, and in today's America, they are getting it. The rise of Trumpism and the MAGA movement has brought cult-like behaviors into mainstream politics. Trump has positioned himself as a deified leader, capitalizing on fear and persecution complexes. Understanding how cults operate is critical to dismantling toxic leadership and preventing the rise of future movements built on fear, chaos, and blind loyalty. The time to act is now, before the next prophecy fails and more lives are caught in the fallout. Man, definitely should just end there. So I'm just going to end it there. Another big question I had this week was, does the cult leader know what he's doing, right? And people are married to this idea that Trump is stupid and not smart enough to be pulling this off. But first of all, he is. He's been practicing his whole life. But also, nobody pulls off a cult alone. A cult is a group. You have help building the cult, always, every time. I don't believe that the leader doesn't know what's going on. I don't think anyone just trips and falls into coercive control. I think this is a stereotype that we've fed ourselves because nobody wants to believe they actually just fell for a con that was a con the whole time. So we love the story of it started off good and went bad. I don't buy it. We can always look back in these cult leaders' lives and see that they've been manipulating people from the beginning and just getting better and better at it. I wrote, you can't hang out with your actual friends without people thinking you're sleeping with them. But I don't know where that came from. I think it actually came from Taylor Swift, but I thought it was interesting. Like, this was in her 1989 era. And, you know, she thought that by just hanging out with women, she wouldn't get rumors about her, and that didn't turn out to be true. But also, I like to say, anyone that is telling, any organization that is telling consenting adults who they should and shouldn't be sleeping with is going to be very complicated. And that is every branch of the U.S. military, almost every religious group, and like many corporations. I realized today how to explain the good cult question very concisely. So I get asked this a lot. Can you have a good cult, right? And I'm like, it's a very patriarchal question because I mostly get asked it by men. But this goes to the definition of cult. And before I even define cult, I tell people that when we're saying cult, like when we're calling something a cult, what we are trying to do is describe when an individual or individuals have come under the coercive control of a group. They come under the coercive control of an individual, abusive relationship, we can call that a 1-1 cult. There's an example of that in Uncultured. You can get signed copies in the notes. 1-1 cult, if they're growing up under abusive control, we can call that a coercive control. We can call that a single family cult, Westboro Baptist Church being the most famous example of this. And if they're growing up on a compound like me, we call that a real cult. But a lot of these are very similar. But once we understand that a cult is a group that is coercively controlling you, then I think I understand that the opposite of cult is not good cult. It's group that's not controlling you. And the opposite of cult leader is not good cult leader. It's anonymous human beings, autonomous human beings, and a group and a leader that doesn't try to manipulate you if you need a leader. So hopefully that is helpful to some people. We've also spent a lot of time on rebuilding Atlantis. So this is mostly a thing going on TikTok, though I think he's on other social media channels now too. But this dude, total Jesus Messiah type dude, like Dr. Yanya Lalich says, these guys all think they're so original, but it's like they went to the same Messiah school. So everyone feels like we're watching a cult being built in real time on TikTok. So this guy went viral saying for people to come live on his scraggly land in Texas for free. And he's talking to the climate disaster victims, like people from Asheville, etc., who may have just lost their homes. And so people have been tagging me, and finally I was like, okay, haven't even looked at the group yet. All I know is this: there's a dude inviting people to his land for free. And so I did a video where I was like, look, we're not going to know if it's bad until it's too late. You know, someone in the comments was like, see you all in 10 years on the Netflix documentary. And it's like, yeah, unfortunately. And there isn't a fine line between good groups and bad groups, right? There's so much gray. But I say in this video, that means individuals should be very much watching out for themselves. And this matches what I do. I don't care about the groups. Like, I don't care about that guy trying to build a cult. I just care, or a commune, you know. I just care about individuals not getting hurt. And so I said, you know, anytime you are living somewhere for free, you are controllable. And anytime you are trading autonomy for a place to live, it, you know, watch out that your labor doesn't start getting exploited, right? And sure enough, it's already started. You have to subscribe to his channel, $5.99, if you even want to talk to him. And it's also a very common way that cults exploit labor is developing undeveloped land for them that he owns, which is for sure kind of what's going to go on here. But I just said these are the risks, right? And then they came and found me. And this one woman, it's not a cult. It's anything but a cult. I live there, blah, blah, blah. Somebody else, if you think it's a cult, you should go there. Like, thank you very much. I don't go to cults on purpose. Nuh-uh. We can learn everything we need to know about cults by listening to and believing cult survivors, it turns out. And also, when you come on my page, you have to prove to me that it's not a cult, not the other way around, because I'm in charge here. But the funniest thing to me was like, when you're not a cult, you don't need to say that. If somebody calls you a cult, so what? If you're not using deceptive recruiting practices and deceptive manipulative ways of keeping people there once you've got them, then it doesn't matter. That's why, like, Kroger doesn't come out all the time and tell us they're not a cult, because we interact with it. And when someone's actually free to leave, they don't have to say that. Kroger doesn't have to tell you that you're free to leave anytime. We just know. This is the same thing with me, because anytime anyone tries to do cult scholarship and starts doing it a little bit well and in the popular eye, people immediately go, well, you're a cult leader. And it's like, I don't have to answer that. I can literally just put up the Guru Gotcha checklist. Wait, I actually will just put it up right now. And if y'all want, you can screenshot it. You know, I just put up... Can we see that? I think it's going to be flipped around when the video airs. And I'm like, okay, here's the things. If you find any of my tactics or behavior concerning, we can talk about that. But it doesn't matter at all to me if you call me a cult leader, because my customers show up, get what they paid for, and I'm not. So I don't have to say it. Right? Obviously, I'm saying it to explain the concept, but that's the concept. And anyway, I went and checked him out eventually, and there's so many red flags, right? The paying, the fact that they're going to be used for labor for sure. The fact that they're off the grid. Like, why? Why do you have to have the isolation? If you're just trying to build a good community, why always the isolation? He said he's having a revolution. And by the way, he didn't say... we are having a revolution. He said, I'm starting a revolution against, overpriced housing. I'm starting. And where is this? I wrote it down. My first question for you, sir, as Captain Mestyanek, former, intelligence and planning officer in the U.S. Army, who are your partners? You're starting a revolution? Who are your partners in this revolution? Because your revolution's gonna fail if it's just you. There ain't no I in revolution. I mean, there is, but there shouldn't be. We are watching a show right now, Big Love. Yes, I know it's old, but it's so well done. Because again, all cults are the same. So like commune life, I keep telling my husband, I'm like, yes, this is really what it's like. And he's like, but you weren't in that cult. And I'm like, no, it's always the same. The biggest things are always the same. Anyway, they have this girl now, and there's like the hot older guy that seems to be counseling her. And by older, I mean the 26-year-old like hot youth pastor, right? And this is a thing y'all know in evangelicalism. In Mormonism, they call it flirt to convert. And in the Children of God, which gets all the pearl clutching, oh my gosh, they use religious prostitution, they call it flirty fishing. All of these things are the same. Okay, glad we covered that. Oh my gosh, I'm listening to all this new music right now. I think I'm finally going into my deal with music trauma phase. And so first of all, anything by Blue Eyes, B-L-U with the umlaut on top, Blue Eyes. So good. And she has this one song that's called Healing Hurts. I've probably listened to it 200 times this week. I mean, it is so good if you are deconstructing and healing. Which is another one called I Used to Be Pretty, that is so good if you're dealing with disordered eating after your cult experience as well. And then I heard there's another singer, Marielle Craft, and she had a line that says, I stay for the good days, for the little crumbs of what this was in the first place. And there's a lot of that in Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets department as well, right? And this is what cults do, right? They love bomb you. You have an amazing experience when you first get into that relationship. And then slowly everything starts to change. But you remember that experience and that amazing feeling. And you keep telling yourself, just a little bit more, and I'm going to get back there, just a little bit more. Same way ADHDs are here telling ourselves, like, I'll get through this week, and then it'll slow down. And then I'll get through this week, and then it'll slow down. I'm like, oh, no, it won't. I have to remind myself, like, it's never going to slow down. That's my brain. Okay, someone asked me about the pushback against remote work and Gen Z in general. And I think that's so interesting because I think that the sacred assumption of capitalism is, you work for the man all your life and then the man takes care of you. And millennials, probably Gen X on down, stuck with the world that the boomers have destroyed for us. I saw this one meme that said, you know when someone leaves like one square of toilet paper on the roll so that they don't have to change it? That's what boomers did, but with the whole culture. And I think millennials like me are just buying out of the assumption that we're going to work for the man for our whole lives. And we're like, nah, we'll go build our own things. And Gen Z is going to take that even so much further. I mean, I'm really excited to see it. Okay, something I realized in therapy this week, now we're going to go to the military side of my story, was that I never experienced purity shaming, right, over like sexual shaming, because I grew up in the sex cult, right? So it was kind of the opposite. For example, if you were shy about like changing in front of other people, that was a sin. But I realized that I did experience overwhelming evangelical and purity shaming culture in the US military as a young woman. And someone sent me just today, it was, I don't know if I have it in here. No, but she was saying, yeah, they literally, because she had hooked up with 2 guys while she was at 6-month training, and her instructor was like said in front of everyone, like, oh, this one here can't keep her legs closed. And like, OMG. This is a big part about what the second half of Uncultured is and sort of showing this stuff. But like, I was completely purity shamed my whole career. And especially when you would deploy, we deployed under this thing called General Order 1, which one of the rules is like behavior rules for while you're deployed. And it's no sex, no alcohol, basically no fun. You can't ever be out of uniform. You have fatigues and PTs, PT uniform, physical fitness uniform, and that's all you can do, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't ban sex directly. What they banned was a man and male and a female cannot be alone in a room or anything that functions like a room, like a bunker. Blanking on that word, like a bunker, for example. People are like, what do they mean functions like a room? Some creative women out there did take that to be like, okay, I can't be alone with one guy. But as I say in Uncultured, like banning sex, first of all, didn't ban the sex. And it didn't even make the sex itself taboo. It made having a vagina taboo. And we were watched and scrutinized every minute of every day, everything we did, from the moment we left our rooms till the moment we went back into them. And it was miserable. And it's still, all of the blame is placed on the women. The briefings before deployment. Don't be that girl. Don't be queen for a year. That girl that's going to love the attention. Like, nobody loves being propositioned by every man in every dark corner. And there were so many dark corners. That's also a quote from Uncultured. So, you know, one of my stories is on the first deployment where I was a second and first lieutenant, right? So young, small, blonde lieutenant. And I was accused of sleeping with 19 different people, including the one other woman, young woman who worked in the Tactical Operations Center with me. And literally my evaluation, he says to me, this man who's a pilot, because I was in an aviation battalion, he says, you know, you are a stellar intelligence officer, but if you don't watch out for your reputation, like, you're not going to go far in the Army. Unsurprisingly, 2 years ago, when the FAA sanctioned a pilot for a dangerous, absolutely avoidable, and irresponsible flyover of Vanderbilt during a football game, guess what pilot did that? Led that. Yeah. Another story was, so I, as a 26-year-old single young woman, did a fun photo shoot with some friends. We were all dressed as very sexy princesses. There was champagne. It was a lot of fun. And good photos were taken. So we get to Afghanistan, where I am now the senior intelligence officer for a battalion of helicopters. Very buttoned up, squared away, brown hair, here to work. Everything about my personal life locked down, as locked as you can get. Facebook changes some settings, and one day my boss just comes walking up to me with his knife hand, and he's like, "You better lock down your Facebook, Captain Mestyanek." I'm like, "What? What?" He's like, "There are 2 battalions passing around photos of you. Did you do some kind of Cinderella photo shoot?" And I stood there stunned and creeped out more than I already was, being, a few women and one of the senior ranking women officers in the battalion. So lots of people that knew me, but I didn't know them. And then he started to walk away, and I said, "Sir, I have a question. I just want to confirm that I am the one being sexually harassed right now, and I am the one getting in trouble for it." And this man, who had just come down from Special Operations Aviation, the unit my husband retired from, hadn't worked with women in quite a while. And he just looked at me, and he said, "You're absolutely right. I'll take care of it." Which is the correct response, sir. And he took care of it. I never heard about it again. Not one word. So, leadership can absolutely change things, as can standing up for yourself and calling things what they actually are. This was not Captain Mestyanek being irresponsible with her personal life. This was a direct invasion into Captain Mestyanek's personal life for the purposes of then sexually harassing her. That's not okay. And when we call things the words that they are, it becomes very hard for the cult leaders to still defend them. I say all the time that when the military says they don't know what to do about sexual assault, and the incredible problem that they have with it, so much for that it has a name, MST, military sexual trauma, which, by the way, if you think about the fact that they tell us we're brothers and sisters, and now we are being raped by our brothers, it's very interesting, isn't it? And I always say that anyone that tells you that they can't control it is lying to you, because nobody on a military base walks on the grass. They can control behavior. That's what they do. This person said, I loved it, "I'm still in 20 years now, and I walk on the grass. I say this not to disagree, but to encourage it to anyone that might see my tiny comment. I had a mental awakening about a decade ago, and since then I've been integrating small acts of resistance into my actions, my words, and how I interact with adjacent bubbles at work, in meetings, on social media, at the shopette," Army term for a little convenience store or the gas station, "everywhere. And hopefully my small audacities will help another feel brave enough to do the same. Walk on the grass." So I loved that. I loved that a lot. And now for a bit of nitpicking. So first of all, somebody said on my TikTok, "A book of culty knitting patterns should 100% be in our future." And that was yesterday, and it is in the works. I am happy to say this is an amazing idea. Okay, so first of all, yesterday was Halloween, so here comes the Halloween costume. So my kid, who is 8, I asked, probably 6 months ago, I said, "What should I be for Halloween? Because I need to start making it." And she says, "Be a potato." And I said, that's boring. And then they said, be an electric carrot." And I said, "Sold! I can work with that." So this is Phomia. This is a wig that I made. These are the carrot greens. Mucho compliments on it. Something that takes a lot of time, but is really easy to teach. And I've been asked to do like knitting or crochet lessons. And I'm going to start with teach you how to make a wig, because I can teach you the skills you need in like 10 minutes. By the way, which leads me to say that I'm doing a paint and sip, different kind of art, on November 22nd, Friday at 7 p.m. It's through my TikTok live, probably TikTok and Instagram at the same time. It's going to be free. I know a lot of people are traveling for Halloween, or for Thanksgiving, but I was having trouble finding a time that worked for me. But I'm trying out one for free before I start doing some sort of charge. But anyways, it's lots and lots of fun. Okay, so I took this jumper, which is like beachwear or club wear, and it's shredded. Anyway, and I put electric carrot legs, and I wore a neon orange jumpsuit underneath with the neon collar that I had made. Oh, I should have brought that one down. And it was excellent. And then Mr. Knitting Cult Lady was a bunny. And specifically Ralphie from Christmas Story, a movie I hate but his family loves. And he was that in the bunny outfit that Ralphie has to wear, and it was pretty epic. If you would like to see us, it will be like linked to this video, but the short is up there. Okay, I also did, I feel like very cottagecore collar, and it's on a little necklace. So I bought this big, like 21 pounds of broken or used jewelry, and I get great stuff and I get great pieces. Descent color. Oh yes, we're going to New York City in December. So our host daughter from an exchange when she was 16 and my kid was 1, a girl from Brazil came to live with us, and she's so amazing, part of our family. I will definitely do some videos while she's here. And now she's a 24-year-old medical resident in Brazil. Anyways, we're going and going to take her to New York, of course. We're DC based. Ride the fancy bus and everything. Like a kid from small town Brazil going to New York City is just, she's so happy. Anyway, Mr. Knitting Cult Lady and I are getting away and going to Hamilton, and not telling Knitting Cult Baby. She loves it. And I'm making my whole outfit, which I'll have videos of. There's my Oscar dress that you may have seen several videos back. This collar. Oh no, I do need to get the scarf again that I finished. Okay, so, going to Hamilton and Broadway. So I have to be Knitting Cult Lady, but fancy. So this is what we're calling my Oscar dress. I put really sparkly sequin yarn on the bottom, and it looks absolutely glorious. And then here's a scarf again that I made. And I did a whole scarf again tutorial, which is also posted in my videos. Those tassels at the bottom and these purple chenille sleeves. I made a collar that's going to go with it. Oh no, but for Hamilton, I'm going to wear this collar. But this one also I made out of inspiration while I was working on that one. And I'll show you this collar. It's another glass bead thing that I got that already had a string on it. Oh, and the cottagecore one has a bracelet that I tied this other bracelet to it, but it's actually too heavy to keep it there. So I'm still figuring out ways to close this. It's too heavy for snaps too. And oh, one more thing. I took a leather jacket. I cut off the sleeves that were a bit tight, and I put crazy yarn sleeves with 4 different kinds of yarn, all from thrift stores or gifts people sent me. And now I love it. I actually love it. And that's all for this week, y'all. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next Friday. Oh, by the way, next week I'm going to Philly on November 7th to give a talk at Jefferson University, and I'm going to host second cult pop-up happy hour in Philly at the Hilton Garden in Center City. It's going to be 5 p.m. to whenever, and I will post the Eventbrite to sign up in the links if you are around or willing to drive to be there. There's no cost. It's just free to get all the information in one place.